Welcome to Launchpad, the unique radio show and podcast that celebrates new book releases and the authors that created them. Now, let's take off with your host, Grace Sammon.
This is Launchpad. Welcome to episode 37 with Noel, Caraccio, Clifford, Garstang, Evelyn, Kohl, LaTorre, and Elizabeth Sumner Wafler. I am so excited to have these authors from She Writes and Black Rose Writing Press. We're so excited because today we're going to be learning about a sharing of a marriage memoir, evocative women's fiction, dual timelines in paradise, and a long-deceased grandmother's quest to solve a family kidnapping. Join us today, fall in love with your next author, find your next book, and on behalf of Mary Helen Sheriff and myself, welcome to Launchpad. If you're joining us live, please feel free to hop in, join the comments, ask questions of our authors, and genuinely enjoy our episode today. We have today Noel Caraccio with her book, Secrets and Revenge, Clifford Garstang with The Last Bird of Paradise, Evelyn Kohl LaTorre with Love in Any Language, a memoir, and Elizabeth Sumner Wafler with A Cleft in the World. Welcome to each of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.
So excited to have you. Let's just jump right in with Noel. Tell us about Secrets and Revenge.
Well, Secrets and Revenge is my fourth novel. It is a sequel to the first one, Secrets Change Everything. And those two are similar, but I have a second novel, which is called Shattered City, where a dirty bomb goes off in New York City. And what do the survivors do? Are they going to work together to survive or not? The third one is called Stand in the Box, which is the story of an 8-year-old and 12-year-old whose parents die in a car crash. And they name an uncle on each side of the family who are not related by blood or marriage as the co-guardians. And you can imagine what a mess that causes. So Secrets and Revenge, I bring back the same characters as the first novel. Fanny is the long-deceased grandmother who is asked to come back from the other side. This is the second time she comes back to help her granddaughter and her husband, whose 3-month-old baby has been kidnapped. They've had no ransom demand, no communication whatsoever from the kidnapper. And so they turn to Fanny to help them. Now, this genre is called magical realism. So you do have people in this world doing all the normal things that they do, but we have Fanny coming back from the other side. She talks to them. They don't see her, but they hear her. And she's quite a character. She's quirky. She's sarcastic. I would say she's full of life, except that's kind of not true because she's on the other side. And she's very opinionated, but she is extremely devoted to the family, and she wants to help them in any way she can. So to make matters even more complicated than they are, the first time she came back from the other side, she was speaking to her daughter, Abby, and Abby was speaking to her. But this time, Abby's speaking to her, and Fanny is not responding to Abby. Abby can't hear her. The only person who can hear her is her grandson, Jason, who is freaked out every time Fanny talks to him.
So, more to be unfolded there for sure.
Yes.
Cliff Garstang, tell us about The Last Bird of Paradise.
Thanks. It's great to be here, and I'd love to talk about the book. One early reviewer described the book as part history, part romance, and part corporate intrigue, which I think is spot on, because in my mind, it's a book about unequal power dynamics in personal, economic, and geopolitical relationships. It takes place mostly in Singapore, where about a century apart, two women have found themselves kind of against their will. The frame story is the contemporary story, which is about a woman named Ashlyn Givens, who is a rising star in her New York law firm. And in 2002, she and her husband are disillusioned with life in New York City. The atmosphere there to them has become oppressive. And so her husband takes a job in Singapore with an investment bank, and they move. And she is feeling resentful. They both get involved in various entanglements that lead to some problems. But the interesting thing is that she acquires 3 paintings to decorate their apartment with, and she becomes very involved in these paintings. They actually come alive for her. They speak to her. They tell her the story of the artist, and the story of the artist we see in excerpts from a diary. And the artist is a woman named Elizabeth Pennington, who in 1914 is sent off to Singapore from England, uh, partly for safekeeping at the beginning of World War I, and also because of a scandal she was involved with in England. The thing that's important about her story is that she is impacted by what happens in Singapore as part of World War I, which is an event that very few people know about, but there is a um, rebellion in Singapore that causes all kinds of problems. And the 2 stories are tied through not only the paintings that Elizabeth did, but also through the 2 women's understanding of the impact of colonialism and exploitation by the Western powers on oppressed peoples. So
Wow.
that's the story.
A lot of research.
More to hear about that as well. And from Singapore to Peru, Evelyn Kohl LaTorre, tell us about Love in Any Language, a memoir of cross-cultural marriage.
Yes, this is my second memoir, and I had finished writing my first memoir, which was about my time in the Peace Corps in Peru, and had chapters left over. So that's what started this book. And this is about what happens when a Peace Corps volunteer returns home after 2 years in the Andes, pregnant and with a Peruvian husband, which her parents kind of got a hint of through her letters, but they still were surprised. And the husband was a university student, knew no English, didn't have a skill, hadn't finished college, and but he loved me very much. So he changed countries. He had never been out of his country, but he took a chance. And so the second book is about what happens when an immigrant comes to this country and some of the obstacles they face, and the obstacles that the wife faces too, because you're trying to join 2 cultures. And at the same time, we had a child almost right away. And so it goes into a lot of trials and tribulations. And it would be for anybody who wants to look at different cultures and marriage and what goes into it. A friend of mine said it shows how a shotgun wedding turns into a bulletproof marriage.
I
So
like that. That is a great tagline. That is a fabulous, fabulous tagline. We do have folks who are joining us on air, so thank you for joining us on behalf of Mary Helen Sheriff, the author marketing coach, and myself. We love having folks here on Launchpad, so thank you for your comments and welcome everybody who is joining us. Please feel free to ask questions. And last but not least, Elizabeth Sumner Wafler, not in Singapore, not in Dubai, not in Peru, but right here in the United States.
And in Virginia, in my book.
Virginia. Tell us about A Cleft in the World.
So A Cleft in the World is the story of Georgie Bricker, a 45-year-old French professor at a small Virginia women's college, who has agoraphobia, the result of a childhood incident. She hasn't left the campus or its tiny town environs in over 20 years. She realizes the irony there because she's teaching her young women students to be game changers and gate crashers while she's a prisoner of her own mind. When she learns that the college may be forced to shutter due to financial straits, and there may be a little embezzling going on in there, the stakes are like Omaha size, STAKES. because she is like, where would I go? How could I leave here? Who would I be? So we're even, it's an identity thing too. But she does everything she can to start bolstering the French department. And meanwhile, they hire a financial consultant from Atlanta who's the son of an alumna. And when he arrives, Georgie discovers that it's her boyfriend from the 8th grade. They haven't seen each other since then. And she's like, okay, no matter how blue his eyes still are, how cute he looks with gray hair, how handsome he is, I cannot get involved with him and thwart my mission. But that doesn't work out quite so well. So by day, she's faculty liaison to his committee. They were thrown together there. And by night, she's moth to his porch light. But Georgie rallies her students, who are a delightful and diverse group of young women, and they come up with a plan that could not only save the college, but also force Georgie out into the larger world of emotional freedom and a fulfilling new life.
Well, we are all over the map in terms of place and people. So I'd like to go back to Noel. And you have written 4 different books. And this one takes place largely in Dubai, I think, or Dubai is a central character in it. Talk about location, please.
It takes place here in New York State, in Westchester County, where I live. But Fanny finds herself in Dubai, which is a clue to the kidnapper, who happened to have known her son-in-law in a prior law firm. He was embezzling money. He was doing black market adoptions and had to flee the country. And her son-in-law and a partner give him 10 days to get his affairs in order, but for $1 million. So they have blackmailed him. So they feel that it's very possible he is behind the kidnapping. The reason he's in Dubai is Dubai does not have any extradition to the United States. So I guess what it is you're right about, I was very taken with what Evelyn said and find her very courageous. But you're right about what you know. You're right about what you know. And being an attorney for, I don't want to tell you how many years, a lot of years, every single one of the stories has something, either courtroom scenes, legal entrapments, entanglements. So those all play into each one of the stories. But Dubai is somewhat of a character. And it came about because I had a client who was the first one I ever knew who used to do business in Dubai.
It sounds like such a layered story.
So there's so many pieces of place here, and I want to get to each of you on the importance of location for your book. But we do have a listener who wants to know that it sounds like you all have great imaginations. Unless you were writing a factual book, did your imagination ever get you into trouble when you were younger? Cliff, let's start with you on that question.
Yeah, probably. I always wanted to be a writer, and one of the things I did after college to give myself some experience was join the Peace Corps, like Evelyn. And I think that was a function of my imagination carrying me away, literally 10,000 miles or however far away South Korea is. So yeah, that kind of got me into trouble with my father, who thought I was throwing away my education by joining this organization that he didn't quite understand.
Okay. Elizabeth, did your imagination ever get you into trouble as a child?
Oh, I'm sure everything got me into trouble when I was a child. But I did. It was my story, A Cleft in the World. This novel was, has everyone heard of Sweetbriar College in Virginia?
Sure. Yeah.
I think Cliff is from Virginia, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I had a high school friend who went there.
Oh, wow. Yes. Okay. So Sweetbriar almost went under. I guess it's been about 15 years ago now. Oh. And that was my inspiration for my story, for what I wanted to happen with Georgie. And I went and visited Amherst on the campus for a day and sat and wrote there by the lake, and just, immersed myself in the location.
I've spent many residencies at the Virginia Center for Creative Arts right across the highway from Sweetbriar College. And I was actually in residence the day that Sweetbriar announced that they were going to close. So
Nice.
yeah, I've been following that very closely ever since.
I got into a
Evelyn.
lot of, my imagination
question.
got me into big trouble when I was in grade school in this small town in Montana, population 200. And I spent the first 3 chapters of my first book, Between Inca Walls, perfecting that story. And what it was is I had a big imagination and saw something, or thought I saw something sexual that took place between a boy and a girl. And I went and told the mother because I wanted the girl to be safe. And the next day at school, they said I had made it all up, and the whole school ostracized me. It was a very traumatic for I think I was 12. But after writing those 3 chapters, they didn't fit in my book. Because my first book is about being in the Peace Corps, and I do put in my childhood in Montana. But so I think I'll put those chapters on my website probably, because they were really perfected, but I couldn't put them in the book.
That would be a great marketing piece, and I'm sure Mary Helen Sheriff would be able to help us with that. Noel,
Yes.
did you ever get in trouble because of your imagination when you were young?
I'm going to tell maybe just a little bit of the opposite of that. When I was a freshman in college, we did these core courses that were related. It was religion, philosophy, and science, or around a core theme. And so for the final project, you were supposed to do something, whatever you wanted. And I was really stumped, and I didn't know what to do. And everything I came up with sounded boring. So I wrote a piece set in the distant future, about humans who don't have any more legs because they've been in space capsules all these times. And believe me, I'm not interested in science fiction in the least. And I showed it to a friend of mine. She goes, "Oh, I don't think you should. I don't think the professors are going to like that. I don't think you should do it." I said, "Well, it's pretty late now." And I submitted it. I said, "What the hell? I have to do something." And they really liked it. I got an A in the course. So mine was a little bit of the opposite, but kind of showing that you have to believe in what you do.
Absolutely. And Bonnie Bell Grenoble Thornton, thank you for that question. I want to go back to the sense of place. We focused a little bit on the United States and Dubai, and now both Cliff and Elizabeth have talked about parts of Virginia. How important is place to both Cliff and Elizabeth? And then Evelyn, I want to go to you because Peru is a good segue there. So Elizabeth and Cliff, place in your novels.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
Well, I think everything in all of my books, place is almost another character. It just, you get immersed in their world and you see it in your mind as you're writing. Right now, and I'm writing right now a Christmas romance coming out October 29th with She Writes Press, and it's the story. It's set here at the Grand Bohemian Lodge in my hometown of Greenville, South Carolina. So I'm all about, I get to go right at the lodge, spend time at the lodge, and getting to know everyone. The staff there has been really helpful and fun.
Wonderful. Cliff.
Well, places, for this book in particular, it's incredibly important. The whole idea of Singapore as a former British colony, as an emerging economic power, it's all related to the themes that I'm exploring, but it's also one of the cities that I know best. I lived there for almost 10 years. I was a lawyer with a U.S. law firm that had a small office there, and I just came to know it extremely well. And when I was writing the book, I went back for 3 weeks to refresh my understanding of the climate and my senses and the food, and also because there's this historical element, I wanted to actually visit some of these early 20th century buildings and late 19th century buildings that are still there, because they play a big part in the story. So, I mean, you can even see from the cover of the book, it's a jungle, and that plays an important part of the story as well. So,
It's a gorgeous cover.
It is
thank you very
Yeah.
much.
very much so. Okay, Evelyn, from Peru to California, the importance of place.
Well, I was going to say in each one of my books, I put a map in the front so you could see where the place is. And I did that for my first book too, Between Inca Walls. And obviously, being in Peru is a little more exotic than being in Northern California, at least people think. And you have to read the book and you'll find out that Northern California can be just as exciting and adventuresome. But and because I'm married to Peruvian, we go back periodically to Peru, so I can see how things change. But there again, I start off the second book with the flavors of the food and the costume. Well, not costumes; they're what people wear there, the different hats that people wear in the different towns, and so especially the roads. When I was there in the 60s, the road between Cusco and Abancay, which took 8 hours on a bus between, and I went many times back and forth, was very high up, and the Apurimac River runs, I think it's 3,000 feet down below. And believe you me, I saw plenty of cars that would go off of that. So the geography has always fascinated me, of different places and the different customs and the everything about different cultures. But my second book goes into what was happening in the 60s and the riots and the tear gas and all that. So place, yeah, is very important and is a character in both my books.
Oh, thank you each for those answers. Noel, one of the things I'm particularly fascinated with this episode is all of you have written multiple books. And as a multiple book author myself, I find that each and every book has changed me and my outlook. This is Secrets and Revenge is your fourth novel. Talk maybe a little bit more about that book, or how this one has changed you differently than the others.
Well, I'm the only one. Let me just at least show you the cover. I haven't done that. So there it is.
Very nice.
There it is. I was an English major in college, and I was looking to get a PhD in English, and I had a Danforth fellowship. But as I looked around, I could see there were no jobs. There were not any jobs. And my parents had paid for college, but they weren't going to keep paying. They expected me to go out and work and get a job. So I decided to go to law school. But I can remember being in English classes, being in a drama class, where I said, geez, I think I could do that. I think I could write. I think I could write something. And it lay dormant for many years until about 10 years ago, when a friend of mine said something about she wanted to do something. She wanted to write a book about her dog. And I said, that kind of piqued me going forward. So what I found is the very first publisher I had talked about the two kinds of writers, the pantsers and the plotters. And the plotters are the ones who have the whole outline written in advance, and the pantsers are the ones who write by the seat of their pants. And if you asked me which I would be based on how I practice law, I would say I would be a plotter. But I have written 4 novels now as a pantser, okay? And what I see is the character tells me what's going to happen. And I'm surprised at that myself.
It is fascinating when that happens. Cliff, you are on 2 novels, I believe.
Actually, it's this is my third novel, and I also published 3 collections of short stories. And they're all very different. Each one has taken a different process. What's unique about this one is that the 2 main characters from the contemporary story and the historical narrative are women. And so writing from the point of view of women allowed me to really think very differently. With previous books, like my last novel was called Oliver's Travels, and there was a lot of me in that character. And with these characters, I'm not there. I really needed to use my imagination to get inside the heads of these two women, and that was extremely fun and challenging, and it's probably why it took me 7 years to write the book.
Man.
Wow.
I can understand that for sure. Evelyn, how have your two books changed you?
Well, of course, writing memoir is the biggest reward, is that you get to look at yourself, if you can look at yourself honestly. And the first book, I really had a lot of compassion for what happened to me and a lot of appreciation. I had been raised in a very religious household. And so, of course, coming home pregnant, which I couldn't tell my parents about until the baby was born. And the day the baby was born, my mother said, "Oh, was he premature?" And I said, "No, Mom." And so you can imagine.
Surprise.
Yeah. And then just having a caring husband, they got so that my husband was very much loved by my family. So, but it took time, and to look at what had happened and my part in it. Again, a memoir, if you're honest, you have to look at your part. And I appreciated the passion that I had and how I went against some teachings that had been given. And I often say it's the best mistake I ever made, because we've been married for 58 years now.
Wow.
And the second one, I even had greater appreciation for what my husband, how he had excelled. He started off being a busboy, knew no English, and ended up with a master's in physics and was a computer programmer. So you appreciate what people have done and gone through.
What great stories. Elizabeth, again, not last but not least, it's a nature of the alphabet. Tell us, you've written 4 different books. How have they changed you?
Well, I just thought of something.
Sure.
So I don't have art copies yet, but here is the what my cover is going to look like.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
Christmas at Reedy Falls, a romance. And what I wanted to say about culture there is that when I discovered that when the lodge opened, the Grand Bohemian Lodge here in Greenville opened, it's decorated with the art of indigenous peoples. And I knew nothing about Native American culture. And so I've had to do a lot of study too. And it's a photojournalist and an up and coming photojournalist and a journalist who come together to cover the lodge at Christmas time. And she has just learned, the female lead has just learned that her grandfather was a Native American, and she had no idea. And she's from south of Broad Charleston, and all that implies her mom is a big snob, and she wants to be nothing like her mom. Whereas Rob, the male character, is from South Boston. So these two cultures are coming together, and then all their romance is happening in a place filled with Native American.
Well, we have lots
art
of
and culture.
Cross-cultural pieces here from around the world to cross-cultural relationships. I could not be more grateful to have each of you on Launchpad, to have everybody who has joined us. Our guests say congratulations on 58 years of marriage, and culture and place are so important. I want to thank each of our guests. Hold up your books. We've got Noel Caraccio. I had it right the whole rest of the episode. Secrets and Revenge, one of her 4 novels. Check out the other 3. Cliff Garstang with short stories, and this book and another novel, and this one, The Last Bird of Paradise. Evelyn Kohl LaTorre with 2 different books, and Elizabeth Sumner Wafler, most recently with A Cleft in the World, and a wonderful book coming out in October, just in time for Christmas. Thanks to everybody who has joined us, and thanks to each of you for being here on the Launchpad.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.
And Evelyn, I'm so impressed with you.
Oh, thank you,
too.
Noel.
I'm even more impressed that you're still together. I thought you were...
This episode is copyrighted by Grace Sammon and Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. Thank you for visiting with us on Launchpad.